In the furnace of the Namib, a Sidewinder rattlesnake must move with calculated precision to survive. The desert heat radiates from the dunes, turning every movement into an intense expenditure of energy. Why does this hunter choose to bury its body in the sand during the midday peak? The scales must withstand the abrasive quartz grit that coats the sun-scorched plains of the Namib. Submerging protects the hunter from the intensity, but will this stillness be enough to secure a meal? Each blink clears fine dust from the surface of the eye, maintaining constant vigil against potential threats. The Sidewinder rattlesnake waits as the temperature of the surface sand begins to reach critical levels. Small tremors ripple through the sand, signaling the hunter's internal clock has locked onto its target. With every breath, the animal maintains a steady posture, saving every ounce of strength for the ambush. Can it strike before the thermal intensity renders its muscles too sluggish to react effectively? Each winding track marks a shift in the predator's search for a cooler hiding spot. Tiny horns catch the light, helping to shield the eyes from the glare of the desert sun. Chemical signals in the air guide it toward the most promising area for an ambush. Does this relentless heat force the predator to secure a meal before the afternoon peak? By shedding the heat of the sun, the rattlesnake gains a tactical advantage in the sand. If the prey pauses near the buried head, will the strike be fast enough? Vibrations transmitted through the grains tell the hunter exactly where the target is positioned. The deceptive lure flickers, drawing the lizard closer to the hidden mouth. A tightly wound spring of muscle waits for the singular moment to lunge upward. As the air grows thinner, the biological cost of waiting begins to mount rapidly. Tension in the jaw structure confirms the predator is ready to snap with precision. The desert heat intensifies, pushing the snake to wait for movement in the shifting sand. Will the cooling shade of a nearby rock offer the energy needed for a strike? Why does the sand remain so restless around its motionless body? Friction between the scales traps the abrasive desert grit against its skin. This rhythmic lure attracts prey, but also exposes the predator to the scorching sun. Does the fleeting shadow belong to a meal or a larger, dangerous intruder? The predator holds its position, resisting the urge to strike too early. Tension builds in the muscles as the lizard pauses inches away. Its jaw muscles prepare for the sudden, violent release of kinetic energy. Every step from the lizard risks discovery of the hidden viper. The explosive eruption of the viper marks the end of its patient wait. The desert ground traps the heat of the afternoon, forcing the snake to remain motionless in the shade of a dune. Each small shift of its body helps the snake retain moisture in this unrelenting, arid environment. Could these specialized scales protect its vision from the shifting, abrasive wind that constantly scours the surface? The lizard remains unaware that it has entered the precise hunting radius of an ambush predator. Will this mimicry draw the lizard closer to the strike zone, or will the prey sense the hidden danger? Precision is the only advantage the predator possesses before the midday sun makes movement impossible. The shadow crossing the sand triggers a massive release of nervous energy in the coiled muscles. Surviving here means knowing exactly when to sacrifice patience for an explosive, life-sustaining strike. Metabolic exhaustion looms, yet the snake must maintain this strained posture to secure its only meal of the day. Is the lizard investigating a potential meal, or has it detected the vibration of the snake's breath? The strike resolves the tension, yet the cycle of hunger continues in this shifting, lethal landscape. The relentless desert heat forces the Sidewinder rattlesnake to bury its body deeper beneath the cooling surface. Energy conservation remains the primary goal as the mercury continues to climb toward the midday peak. Will the lizard return before the thermal intensity renders the predator immobile? Each grain shifted reveals a metabolic cost of staying buried in the shifting dunes. What signals are transmitted to the senses of potential desert prey passing nearby? A shadow passes, triggering an immediate predatory focus despite the extreme heat stress. The prey pauses within the reach of the strike zone, unaware of the hidden threat. How long can the Sidewinder sustain this perfect stillness before the target moves away? Muscles coil in preparation for a sudden strike, burning stored energy in a split second. The target detects a slight surface irregularity, prompting a cautious retreat from the danger zone. The ambush strike begins, fueled by the last of the snake's remaining thermal endurance. The desert heat intensifies, forcing the Sidewinder into a state of absolute stillness to conserve its limited energy. Every muscle contraction risks breaking the cover, but the growing thermal pressure demands a more precise orientation. Will the prey detect the subtle distortion in the sand before it wanders within striking distance? As the lizard scans the terrain, what hidden cues might betray the presence of the waiting Sidewinder? The build-up of sand tension indicates a shift in the snake's metabolic readiness for the coming strike. Small tremors on the dune surface are the only warning the lizard receives before the final lunging moment. How does the serpent maintain such internal hydraulic force while buried in shifting abrasive sediment? Heat waves distort the horizon, creating an environment where even the slightest movement can mean immediate discovery. This luring behavior triggers the lizard's pursuit instincts, drawing it directly toward the concealed viper's strike zone. Modified scales above the eyes protect the vision of the hunter as it prepares to strike through the sand. Will the structural integrity of the sand hold until the lizard is perfectly aligned for the capture? The desert ground remains furnace hot as the predator waits for a sign of movement. Shifting body weight minimizes contact with the surface, preserving precious moisture in the intense heat. Vertical pupils dilate, as the sun's trajectory demands constant adjustment to the changing light. Will the lizard pause long enough for the strike, or will it vanish into the dunes? Why does the snake ignore the smaller insect and focus exclusively on the lizard's gait? The lizard detects the subtle shift, its survival instinct sparking a moment of hesitation. Venomous potential builds as jaw muscles tense for a strike triggered by the lizard's movement. High noon temperatures turn the landscape into a crucible where every missed strike proves fatal. Twitching tail tips mimic the movement of an insect, baiting the lizard into range. Hardened skin over the eyes keeps grains from causing irritation during this ambush. Surface tension fractures under the weight of an imminent strike as the predator breaches cover. The relentless desert heat forces the Sidewinder to remain motionless, conserving energy as the midday temperature climbs. Subtle shifts in the sand allow the snake to reach cooler layers, avoiding the intensity of the overhead sun. Will the passing beetle trigger an instinctual strike before the heat renders the hunter sluggish? The lizard scans the shifting dunes, unaware that death lies hidden beneath its very feet. Does the snake possess enough metabolic power to launch a successful strike in these searing conditions? The lizard pauses, sensing a vibration, its heart rate visibly spiking in the dry air. Biological adrenaline surges, overcoming the lethargy induced by the desert sun. In this desolate landscape, every movement is a calculated expenditure of dwindling resources. This deceptive movement serves to bridge the distance between the hungry predator and its potential meal. These physical structures shield the eyes from the abrasive grit during the final moments of the ambush. The threshold of containment breaks as the predator initiates the strike, concluding the long wait. Will the desert heat drive the predator into early exhaustion before the hunt concludes? As the snake repositions, its scales displace dry grains to find thermal relief. What triggers the instinct to strike when the prey is barely within range? The tiny movement signals that the meal is now within the lethal zone. How long can a reptile sustain such stillness against the rising intensity of the sun? Sensory vibrations alert the lizard to the subtle displacement of its environment. Is the strike force sufficient to secure the lizard before it reacts? Extreme heat forces the desert inhabitants to finalize their interactions rapidly. Controlled flicking lures the prey toward the strike threshold of the viper. Physical ridges guard the eyes as the predator rises to deliver the bite. The sudden expansion of the surface signals the release of stored kinetic energy. The shifting dunes preserve their secrets, masking the predator as it waits for the shifting thermal currents to stabilize. Will the lizard return to the shadow, or has the rising thermal intensity rendered this stretch of desert void of life? What fate awaits those who move across this furnace? And can the hunter strike before its own body reaches its thermal limit? The desert cycle continues as wind-blown sand buries the
dunes
tracks of
waiting
today's
for the
hunt,
next rain
leaving
to stir new life from the soil.